friends, welcome back again to an episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our YouTube channel is dedicated to all things Bannerlord related and especially advanced battlefield command and tactics. And in this episode today, we are going to get down to the ground level, use the RTS overhead mod a bit, and I'm going to show you in great detail how we win battles on the channel using an Aserai army. Of course, we have our Aserai campaign going at this time, and we have gotten to a point where we have turned this army into a machine, right? We will be using master archers and veteran caravan guards and a handful of other troops that are not quite Aserai, but 90%, maybe 95% of our army here is Aserai. In fact, I specifically recruited this army and sought out this army for us to fight here today for this episode. Now, our main protagonist here, Wazuban, is a beast of a commander. That's important to know. You're not just going to be able to start your campaign and fight an army 3 times your size and hope to win. And of course, we have a very strong army, but tactics are still necessary. Adjust the sound here just a little bit. As you can see, we're outnumbered 3-1, and the power bar doesn't like our chances, but I like our chances because we have very powerful, very versatile Aserai units. You can see our full army there, and then you can glance at the enemy's army. And they're not bereft of good troops. They've got elite cataphract, 109, 100 Imperial elite sergeant crossbow, and whatnot. This is a very good army, and it's a mixed army, which is good, right? That means the enemy's going to present us with a variety of different challenges. Of course, we'll use normal player damage, and we are using the battle size mod so that this will feel like a huge battlefield. Now, on this battle, I'm going to use the RTS mod extensively. I'm hoping to, here we go, I'm hoping to have a little bit more open terrain so that you can see things clearly. And not only will I fight much of this battle in slowed down RTS mod, but I will pause it a few times if there's something necessary for me to show you. Now, I'm going to spend a couple minutes here with just the setup. The setup is very important. Anytime you have an army, you want to make sure that your setup is consistent, even if you're fighting different types of armies, right? That means that you're going to want to have your crossbow division, your archer division, your cavalry division, etc. broken down. Now I'm going to go division by division here. You have to use 8 divisions. You could use 5 or 6 and still be pretty effective, but I think 8 is optimal. If you follow along with that, I think you will have great success. So the first division is effectively a skirmisher division, right? And I get that by selecting shields and spears. Now we're going to have these guys in a big long line, and I've learned to use the Aserai infantry a little bit differently than I've used other kingdoms in the past. We're actually going to use this main infantry division essentially as a bunch of javelin throwers at the beginning of battle, and then later we will collapse upon their infantry. Ahead of them is going to actually be our vanguard. We're going to have Aserai Vanguard Ferris with a decreased taken melee attack damage banner, right? The banners are important. If I blow through any of these or don't mention them, you can always go back and look. You want to give your captains obviously perks that'll help these divisions, and they should have banners that make sense. I'll try to mention as many as I can here. Now I'm actually going to move these formations up, I think, when the battle starts. But for now, you can get a rough idea how it works. This cavalry will be in a shield wall, simply holding that line, right? The enemy cavalry will charge it and largely run into a dead end, or at least a solid wall of spears. They're not going to go through it very well. Once they do come through it, these guys get their game on. This is the shock troop division, right? These guys are mostly palace guards. There's a handful of other infantry in here, and that's just fine. The key, though, is that most of these guys don't have shields, and they have nasty two-handed weapons. These guys are probably the best singular unit in the Aserai kingdom. I don't mean that they're better from the Vanguard Ferris as a one-on-one, but if you use them correctly, they are capable of amazing destruction with those executioner axes. The reason they're behind the cavalry, of course, is the cavalry protect them from archers, and also that stands up the enemy cavalry so that those guys can use their axes. If you've ever swung a heavy axe, if something is moving, it's very difficult to hit it. Now, the 4th division is a crossbow division, and I want them to be able to form a square like this or a shield wall if necessary, and so I delineate or separate my crossbow from my archers by selecting that little shield preference. Again, and that's usually off to this left side because that's often where you will face Aserai Vanguard Ferris, horse archers, Khans guards, and crossbow destroy ranged horse units, cons guards, etc. They are just their kryptonite. The 5th Division will be archers. Maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. I'm not really certain what we're going to face the initial onslaught here from the enemy. It looks like a bunch of cavalry, but I'm sure they'll have some infantry and archers. If it was mostly cavalry, I would do this. I would do a big ring defense around these archers and actually put a shock troop division, these two-handed divisions, inside the ring with the archers. I think they're going to be a mixed division, so we'll put the 2nd Cavalry Division like that. Now, again, that's important to understand that we have these 2 different cav divisions, and they're basically just out in front, blocking for us, right? In shield wall, preventing our units from being steamrolled by the enemy heavy cav charge, right? That's going to dramatically slow down the enemy heavy cavalry. Behind them, we will put shock troops again. Now, I have the 6th Division in my campaign, a mix of archers. We have Arwa, who's a great Aserai commander. You can see her perk list is amazing. And notice the increased troop movement speed, right? That's because I want these shock troops to close. I got ahead of myself a little bit. Again, the crossbow division has the shield, and we have a commander with a decreased taken ranged attack damage. That way they take less damage from horse archers and javelins being thrown at them. The 5th Division, we're lucky enough to have Corain in our army, and she will be in charge of our archers, right? Giving them all nice perks, a whole bunch of master archers, and we have a handful of others, like we have a few Khazate marksmen. But no Fian champs, right? We're going to win without Fian champs in this battle. Again, so the crossbow, 4th Division towards the left, the archers towards the center, and the 6th, I think it actually makes sense to switch this to shock troops, because I want these guys to actually hold fire and charge. The reason you hold fire with them is that you don't want these guys throwing their little pitiful throwing axes. You can actually do this before the battle starts and just tell that 6th Division, hold fire, I don't want you to shoot. Now, if there's archers in there and you tell them to hold fire, that's problematic. So even though a lot of times I do run archers in here, for this demonstration, we will get all of these archers out of there, and it will effectively be very similar, in fact, identical to what we have going on with the 2nd and 3rd Division, right? The 2nd is cavalry, and you have shock troops behind it. Over here, the 8th is our cavalry blocking and protecting for these shock troops, and the 6th Division will be behind them. So a whole bunch of archers and crossbow at the back. We have a pretty balanced army ourselves. We have about an even number of infantry and archers, and a little bit less cavalry. I have no problem with you going more cavalry as long as it's javelin cavalry. I would not fuck around or mess around with traditional elite cataphracts and things like that. They're just not that good in Bannerlord. All right, so we are going to have a horse archer division and a jav cap division. Again, that 8th Corps is just, that's a horse, a heavy horse division leading in front. It's basically the 2nd and the 8th you should think of as almost identical, although the 8th typically in my army is a little bit stronger units. Right? In this case, we have enough Vanguard Ferris to separate them between the two. Now again, we're going to fight much of this battle on 50% of the speed using the RTS overhead, and we're going to fly overhead the battle and give you sort of the total war view of this battle. Now, the enemy does have a mixed force, but it's heavy cavalry, which is good because our army is basically designed to destroy heavy cavalry. So we're going to move our cav divisions forward. We're also going to move our skirmishers and shock troops. And notice the relationship between the 2nd and the 3rd, right? That's the 2nd, that's the 3rd. That 3rd division or shock troops, they should be virtually right behind the cavalry. That way, when I tell them to charge, they just start tearing the enemy up right behind the heavy cavalry. That cavalry also protects them. It's a symbiosis. In other words, the units both help each other. The cavalry prevent the shock troops from being speared by enemy cavalry, and then the shock troops rush up and give support to the cavalry fighting the enemy cavalry. All right, so crossbow, as I said before, are already starting to rake their horse archers. These guys shoot fast, and the damage is high. That means they're going to shred horse archers. You will experience this if you start doing this. These guys shred horse archers. I'm not even, in fact, going to focus on that because I hear the rest of their cavalry charging, right? We get to watch this in slow-mo. Here come a bunch of these elite cataphract holding up their shields. They're all excited. They've got a handful of other units mixed in here, but this is mostly elite cataphract charging. And what are we doing? Our guys are throwing a few javelins, but for the most part are just holding the line, right? And as the enemy heavy cav hits them, even in, well, especially in slow-mo, very, very few enemy cavalry get through. Now that they're held up, we send in these axe murderers, right? These guys get told to charge, and the two-handed weapons just start bobbing up and down on the skulls of these enemy elite cataphract, and they're going to cause amazing damage. On this other side, the same thing. The 6th Division shock troops is a little bit further. They get sent to charge as well. Now notice the 1st Division here. This is the 1st Division, all these guys with shields. They don't do anything. In other words, they stand there in a shield wall line and basically throw javelins. I don't want them charging. Part of the reason is that the enemy vanguard is coming in. Part of the reason is that they're doing a lot of damage just with javelins. Horse archers get moved to the side. That's the 7th Division. Now here comes their infantry vanguard, right? This is a lot of powerful infantry. Elite Metavolitons, Legionnaire, and you see a few of our infantry snuck through. Let's go ahead and pull our infantry back now. We're going to pull the 3rd back, kind of at an angle off to the left of our army, and the 6th back kind of at an angle to the right of our army. What we are doing is basically opening up the center of our army. Now, we have our cavalry here, right? We have these 2 different divisions. I'm just going to move them forward because all I want them to do is absorb arrows while we destroy the enemy vanguard infantry. These cavalry are not being told to charge. They're not actually fighting. They're just kind of passing their way through the enemy infantry while we get it on with their infantry, right? We are creating effectively a funnel for their infantry in the middle. And as soon as their infantry is close to our 1st Division in here, we will charge with those 3 different divisions. And again, importantly, the enemy archers are not going to be shooting very many of our infantrymen. Now notice the javelins flying down there, right? Those guys are still throwing javelins. Javelins is one of the most important weapons in the Aserai arsenal. Now I can backpedal the 1st Division a little bit as the vanguard moves in. I am aware that this is a lot of micromanaging. This takes practice. If you can master this, though, now the enemy vanguard is fully sandwiched by these infantry lines, and almost behind the enemy, your assassination men, your 2-handed shock troops roar in. Now, these cavalry are actually facing the wrong way. If that ever happens, pull them, of course, from left to right, and they will face the right way. Now, look at the death spam, right, as our infantry surround and destroys the enemy vanguard. Even though we were outnumbered here, they had much more infantry than us. They just get swallowed up on the ends. The line in the center holds decently well, and those 2 different divisions will just swallow them up. Now, I actually don't see the 3rd Division charging the right way. It looks like they're kind of charging all over the place. If that happens, you can just make those guys get closer to the action and say, nah, I want you guys over here. It's nice that you guys are chasing after cavalry and stuff over there, but get over here where the action is. And then, of course, once they're close to combat, you can have those guys charge. At this stage, it doesn't matter, though. You can see the death spam. It's like 80 or 90% green. And again, all of this cavalry is strictly defending against the archers. Now, there's a moment here, though, where you want to go offensive. Can you see their archers are starting to run? That is because they are reforming. Once you get used to the rhythms of Bannerlord, it's like a dance, right? Their archers are now running because their vanguard got vaporized. It's almost like the scene from Braveheart, where all the enemy archers are like, oh shit, we don't have any support here. We don't have any help. So what do? Those formerly defensive cav divisions, these guys that have been waiting patiently, bring them up in big long lines, and then as soon as they're close, have them charge, right? Now, this is also in combination with a movement of the rest of your divisions. As this is happening, I recommend you move your other units up aggressively so that they can get positioned. The exception to this would be if you have a lot of archers, then you want to pull back and maintain your position on that hillside, right? You want to pull all your units back, including these cavalry. Here we will be aggressive, also to make sure that this is not a 45-minute battle. We'll move our units up. And all I'm really doing here is starting to form our lines in logical formations. What does that mean? That means infantry in front of archers, cavalry in front of infantry, almost all the same things that we set up originally. Now I'm going to leave these guys in here a second. What happens, right, when you charge their cavalry or charge their infantry with your cavalry, they get mauled, right? So we're going to pull our cavalry back now that they have shellacked the enemy archers. Now, we're going to start forming a big C shape with all our different formations. Basically, a U shape, if you're looking at it from the top, or a C shape from the side. And the idea here is that we're going to swallow up whatever the enemy troops are left, right? The enemy troops are kind of compacted in the middle there. You can see 300 archers, 122 infantry, and we're going to start to get our units spread out and surround the enemy force here, right? We're going to make sure they can't get any troops to the side of us, and of course a lot of our units will be attacking the enemy from the side. Right, so we've got the infantry in a shield wall so that they're somewhat protected from all the arrows coming in. In fact, you can hear them blocking. We're going to start stretching out the 2nd Division on the left. That's cavalry, and there's some archers mixed in there. That's how the battle size mod works. Now we're going to move up this shock troop division, of course, behind the cavalry. By now, that should be a familiar theme. We're going to move the 4th Division up, and the 5th and 6th, we're going to start to stretch around the side of the enemy formation, right? On our right side or the enemy's left side. So we start to pull these guys. Again, it's in slow motion, so this is not going to go as fast as a normal battle would go. And if you have a trouble with the speed of Bannerlord and you have access to the RTS mod, it's a must get. It's definitely a mod that will help you learn the game. All right, so the 2nd Division is crimping in pretty hard here. Now we can just start systematically moving these units towards the enemy, right? The 2nd Division moves up. The 8th Division is out in front. That's these cavalry. They're still playing defense, right? The enemy's shooting and they're hitting. Those same cavalry are just accumulating arrows in their shields. They are going to lead the way, though, for this surrounding charge, right? The infantry's moving up. The crossbow's moving up. Over here, the 2nd Division is pulled in on the enemy flank. And we're going to move all these units directly behind this cav unit. And I'm going to put that cav unit right in front. I don't know if you saw that. Watch these guys come up. They're not attacking. They're just standing there, right? These guys are all just absorbing arrows. They've got a dozen arrows in every shield. And all they're doing is plowing the road for all of our infantry and shock troops so that all of these savage two-handed shock troop guys can arrive at the enemy without being shot to pieces. Now that they do, everybody gets told to charge, and one last chef's kiss here, or coup de grace, send that 8th Corps right through the enemy formation. And what they do is they just plow the road. Now the rest of your units simply follow them, and look at it. It's like linebackers or linemen just plowing the road for a football team. Yeah, they're going to get killed in there, but they're also letting all of your shock troops arrive at the enemy line with way less damage from archers. Your shock troops are now arriving, clashing on the enemy archers, and everybody at this stage can be told to F1, F3, right? Some of the guys love the F1, F3. This is where it's appropriate, when the mass of your units are now all compacted on the enemy. My lazy character was sitting way back here. We don't even need him, right? We're just going to let this play out. At this stage, though, the battle is already over. We'll just let these next couple minutes sort of pass here as our troops just execute everything in sight. The enemy's getting reinforcements, and they're trying to form archer lines, but our units are so close, and there's this compacted mass of infantry, cavalry, and shock troops just shoving its way through. There's no way those archers are going to be able to stop that giant glob of troops. On top of that, over here, of course, we have archers advancing, shooting them, and we will speed this up here, and you can just watch the death spam. It's just fizzing. Of course, at this stage, the enemy has weaker troops, so you would expect us to win anyways, but even being outnumbered here, we're still just slaughtering the enemy. And our troops they're basically a dog that's been let off its leash here, right? These guys have been told to kill everything in sight. The shock troops are in here butchering everything they get a hold of. The archers are back here shooting whenever there's a shot available, and this battle is over. It's just extermination city. I mean, the enemy's getting a few kills, of course, but look at the death span, right? It's just flushes of green with a few red, and then a huge flush of green, and the stats tell it all, right? We're looking at about 350 casualties and, 2,300 kills? So it's about a 7-to-1 kill ratio. And this is being outnumbered 3-to-1, right? Our army just simply chewed through this Western Empire force. If I was playing this in my campaign, I would have played this to an even higher level of proficiency. I would have done more kiting at the end. And of course, my character would have been rampaging through here as well, killing heaps of units as well. But none of that was necessary, right? Simple tactics here. Or not simple tactics. Admittedly, these are complex tactics. That gives you guys a nice field view with some slow-mo and whatnot on how an Aserai army can absolutely destroy the enemies. So Wazuban got 0 kills, right? He just sat there before he got knocked unconscious. And let's see who did what here before we wrap this episode up, right? Let's kind of look a little closer at the death spam. So the companions didn't really do that much, right? 10 kills, 4 kills, 6 kills. They didn't really have a factor. Now their perks did. Look at this shit. The Mamluk Guard and look at the Palace Guard, right? 468 kills and they lost 48 guys. So that's almost a 10-to-1 kill ratio. Our other infantry did pretty well, but you don't see anything obvious except for the Palace Guards, except for these shock troops, right? The Aserai strength really is these Palace Guards and the shock troops. They have decent other units. The Vanguard Ferris are good units too, but when you use them defensively like this, it plows the way for these Palace Guards to win the day. All right, friends, well, we're going to wrap this episode up. Of course, you want to subscribe if you want to see more. I appreciate you, fellas, and I will see you guys next time.